Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for another ADOSKC chat. Here we are talking about headline news and how they affect ADOS in Missouri, specifically Kansas City and St. Louis, um, and across the nation in general. If you are watching for the first time, thank you so much. Please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, please share this with your family and friends. And let's get started. So today, as we go around sharing our views, also take a moment to introduce yourselves. And I'll start. I am Kiera. Hi. And today we are starting off with racism. So, yeah. So there's been a lot of reporting on racism in Kansas City this week, with the KC Fire Department, with the police department, with ongoing protest against the chief of police to resign, and with our new city manager, Brian Platt, who was involved with a discrimination lawsuit. So, with all those headlines, with all that news, with all the protests, with the whole history of racism that we know in Kansas City, there's been a lot of backlash from our government leaders, and I just want to share like this little snippet that really stuck out to me as far as the views from our keep going. Okay. So right here, this is the stars reporting on our city council's reaction to their reporting from the Kansas City Fire Department. And this paragraph, or this part here says, city leaders pledged Monday to swiftly investigate and root out systemic racism in the Kansas City Fire Department, saying newly published revelations about the department's culture were unacceptable. City council members and community leaders said they were disappointed, shocked, and disgusted by the treatment of Black and women firefighters described in the three-part series The Star published online Sunday. The series details systemic racism, sexism, and harassment that the city has tolerated for decades. Already, Mayor Quentin Lucas has asked fire officials to testify before the city council on Thursday. The new city manager, on his first day, detailed steps in his office will take over the coming weeks to address the star's findings. And a community leader called on the city to have public hearings about the KCFD. So, it's a lot to unpack. If you have a chance, please go through the series. It's a lot, but not so shocking as what some city council members have been saying. Um, the fact, I just my opinion, the fact that these types of racial discrimination has been going on in the city since its inception should be no shock to anyone, especially not our government leaders. So, as we open up the first discussion, my question is, Are we just being kind of like oblivious or kind of ignorant to racism in Kansas City? Like we just don't want to see it, and now that it's kind of like smacked us in the face, like we're like, oh, now we have to deal with this, you know. Now that the Star's reporting on it, now we can deal with it, even though it's I mean, it's clear that racism has long been a problem in Kansas City. So why are we just now pretending like, oh, I didn't know, or we have to solve these issues now?
I think who is the we? Because like some of us know that racism has been going on. Some of us know all these things have happened and they continue to happen. And I think what's happening is the people that see the racism and choose to ignore it, the willful ignorant, now that it's in their face now. And they're like, oh, this is the thing. And I think it becomes a moment where it's like, okay, now I have to pick. I can't act like I don't know about this anymore. Like now I either have to try to further ignore it, but further ignore it. At this point, if you're ignoring it, and we know that you were doing it willingly. And I think at that point, those are the people that are deciding, you know what I'm saying, what to do about it. Oh, this is in my face. Cause I mean, I'm not being from here. I've only lived in Kansas City for a couple of years, handful of years. Um, it. I'm from Louisiana, and it's very clear where everybody stands if your eyes are open. And I think here it's clear as well, but because the city is the size that it is, a lot of people can act like they don't know what's going on because they live 10 miles away.
Hmm. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It's
And I
like,
think,
yeah, I was just there's no way you don't know. Like I turn on the news, like literally every day somebody gets murdered. Literally,
mhm.
if there are not multiple people getting murdered a day, and it's like I know if you watch the news, you see that. You have to
Yeah.
see it. Like, and I just think that's how I know that you see it. You just don't care because the news stations wouldn't be in business if a lot of people weren't watching the news. And there are a lot of murders and other things that are reported on the news, and we know where it's happening. It's in the same. I'm not from here, and I know where the hood at. Like all of them. And
Yeah.
so it's like I know if I know, everybody else here gotta know.
Well, I think it's like um what I was bringing up is like not just that, we see it. It's not just that it's, there's blatant racism. It's that it's being blatantly ignored. My point is that racism in Kansas City has been blatantly ignored for decades and centuries. And, you know, um, any city council member who says like, "Oh, I'm disappointed and shocked about this." Well, there's been there's been reports of racism within city council. So I'm not sure what the shock is over. If you have city council members themselves protesting against the racism of other city council members, I don't see why you're acting so surprised when the other departments and or the other government organizations have racism as well. Like what's the surprise here?
Yeah, I think that's the part that is happening now. When you have officials speak out like, "Oh, this is a new thing," now there are people saying, "What are you talking about?" Here are 37 instances in the past 6 months in which this was a major issue. So
Hmm.
if this is new to you, why are you not paying attention to this, and this? And that's
Yeah.
why I think it's out now because it's like, no, you got somebody in the room that can check
I think part of it, I'm going to jump in and say that I think part of it is with respect to the surprise expressed by the city council. I think part of that has to do with the fact that it's the fire department, just because it's such as a department, and of course their mission is to, as a team, respond to emergency situations more so than even more so than the police, and that they've been kind of mythologized, as this band of brothers, almost like a true, regiment, like a military regiment, in the sense that they live together, essentially they put themselves as a team in harm's way more so than the police. I think people are surprised that it's within the fire department, that's within a fire station, because there's, like I said, the dynamics within a station itself are so much more intimate, even than, a police department, that it's hard to believe in some respects that, that would exist in such a tight, supposedly, ostensibly tightly knit organization, particularly within that specific fire station. Obviously racism on its own is not surprising in any way. It's just, I think it's more related to the fire station and the fire department itself. But that's just my speculation on that.
And I don't know if pushback, I don't think that's the right word to use, but something I want to add to that I think is important.
Maybe just a piggyback or whatever.
Yeah, piggyback. I think that's better. And I'll speak, and again, I know I always try to differentiate when I'm speaking about a group as opposed to me on some me type of stuff. And this is me on some me type of stuff. Coming from a very impoverished neighborhood and growing up in youth sports and, playing all of the rec league teams my whole life, playing in high school, organized sports, playing collegiate, Division I sports, then going out into corporate America and, working for some of the best companies in the country. Let's just be honest. These companies are on Fortune's best companies or whatever. I don't know that there's any place that I've been where Black people and white people have been in one place that racism didn't exist and wasn't shown. And that's in all team sports. And these are guys that, I blend with, I fought with, and sacrificed for. Even in the midst of our team, it was still a thing. Like, specifically, I think about when I was running track in college, in high school, our track team was really, really, really close. And it's like, we understood, when school was in, if it was football season, we really didn't talk to each other like that. You know what I'm saying? And these are guys that when the game is on the line, you can bet your dollar on. It's ingrained in everything we do. And I feel like we have to view it that way, because the conversation had, if it's a group of white people and a group of Black people, once those separate, the conversations are totally different. Like totally worlds apart. And I don't know one situation in which that didn't happen. Like that wasn't the case. Like generally those conversations are drastically different. And I think we have to speak on that. Because if we don't be honest about those moments, nothing's gonna change. And I think we're looking at what happens if you don't actually make the changes. Like the Emancipation Proclamation was 150 years ago or more, but we didn't do it right, apparently, because you can't. If you're free, and we talked about this yet, if you're truly free, then the Civil Rights Act never needs to happen. If you're truly free, then the 13th Amendment doesn't need to happen. If you're truly free, you don't have to have, voter suppression. That's not freedom. If those things are happening to you, then you're not free, period. And I think until we can speak as honestly and openly and boldly about it as that, I think we'll just be running in circles. Because we have to talk about the essence of all of this and the honesty in honesty.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of like Wi-Fi trouble this morning or this afternoon, but I did hear the most of what you said, and I agree. Like we've, I feel like in order for us to ever get anywhere close to reparations, we have to first be honest with ourselves. We have to hold other people to accountable to being honest as well, as far as racism and how Black Americans have been affected by it. So when I'm going to share another um, part of an article, and this is from the Kansas City Star. This is the first article in the series from their reporting on KCFD, and I'm just going to share this one part of it, and then we'll continue the conversation. Okay, so excuse me. Um, it says this is the beginning of the article. Moments after saying his favorite knot was a noose, a white Kansas City fire cadet threw a rope around the neck of his Black classmate and pulled it tight. Word of the incident last year in 2019 at the Kansas City Fire Academy spread quickly to firefighters in the city. Many wanted the white cadet Benjamin Barton fired. Instead, he remained employed for several more weeks and eventually was allowed to resign. Demands by Black firefighters to hold Barton fully accountable ran into barriers both outside and inside the Kansas City Fire Department. A year-long investigation by the Star found that the incident is part of a larger pattern of systemic racism and harassment that has been tolerated by the department for decades. So, so there it is. Like you say, we have to, you know, we in order for us to like deal with these issues, we have to like acknowledge them head on. Well, there it was, and again, I'll reiterate that for anyone in city council to say like, oh, these incidents of racism are unacceptable, they're in, we won't tolerate them. They have been tolerated. They've been tolerated, they've been accepted, they've been awarded, they've been rewarded for years and years, decades and decades, centuries and centuries. So I feel like at this point we have to stop pretending like racism is not an issue. We have to stop saying like, oh, this is unacceptable. It was accepted. You know, he was, instead of being fired on the spot, Barton was allowed to resign. He was just allowed to say, oh, well, I quit. No, he should have been fired. And in my opinion, charges should have brought, like charges of anti-Black American racism. That should have been a hate crime.
That's a hate crime. That's assault. You threw a rope around somebody's neck.
Yes, you put a noose around a Black man's neck and you're allowed to just quit. Like, no, he should have been prosecuted and put in jail. So we need to stop pretending that racism isn't rewarded in this city and in this nation. And until we can acknowledge that, we won't get anywhere close to.
I know Kiara's having some Wi-Fi issues, so she might come back here in a second. But till she gets back, I think we gotta or the way I like to look at it. I don't know if anybody's surprised by that. I know it don't surprise me at all. But I know I like to look at the situation is if a black man were to do the equivalent, what would happen to him? So if as a black man I tied a rope and threw it around a white dude's neck, and this is my favorite kind of rope, I'm pretty sure if I wasn't murdered by police, I'd spend at least 10 to 15 years in jail. Easy. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Okay.
So sorry about that. It's like my Zoom app picked a hell of a time to decide to update. So did you catch all of what I just said, or did you miss it?
We caught most of it. I think we missed like the last, I figure probably 40 seconds.
Okay. I was just I think the last thing I was saying is like in order for us to get anywhere near or anywhere closer to reparations, we need to start holding people accountable to accepting that racism is a deeply rooted systemic issue across the board. Like we can't just let people say like, "Oh, we won't accept this, we won't tolerate this." We have to get them to see how it has been accepted, how racism is celebrated in this country, starting here in Kansas City and St. Louis.
I don't know. Y'all, whenever we talk about it, I can't help but think about who's having this conversation. Because like I get frustrated a lot of times when I'm speaking to, other black professionals, and I feel like they're sugarcoating. Like, you know what I'm saying? You work at a company where you may be doing well for yourself, but you only know 3 other black people that's doing well like you. I feel like those people never speak on what's really going on. They're like, oh no, it's cool. Like, no, it's not cool. You know 20 people that work here. Only 3 of y'all like it. You need to say that because that's the truth. But that's what I guess the corporate term is drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever they say. Like, it's like, bro, like just keep it good. And I think a lot of us have got stuck in that space where it's like, well, it's bad, but I'm a lot better off than everybody else I know, so I probably should just shut up. No, you gotta talk about this because if they bad off, you next. Like it ain't no way to get out of that. But I think a lot specifically like the corporate black people, us educated black people, like no, we not being honest about what's real. Or being honest the fact that, you may be doing great at your job. And you may have had a master's and everything, but you're not telling nobody you gonna sell and make $1,400. You a month. You didn't talk about that part. Like you gotta talk about that part because you got people striving to be like you, and you're not good, and they don't know that till they get there. And not to go too much off into that tangent, but I really think about who's having these conversations. And again, being from the South, I always try to put that in there because I didn't grow up here. So I'm not sure what it was like here. But I know where I grew up. No, you that conversation you had amongst your white buddies was way different than that conversation you had with all the dudes from your hood. It was like, oh no, bro, like, how these white people is. These white people on that white people shit. Like, we talk about that all the time. So I feel like until we can have that conversation without feeling ashamed or feeling like, because most of us feel like, how people say, I know my family saying, you can't talk like that around white people while something happened to you. Because it did. But I know my great uncle was the last man hung in Lincoln Parish, Louisiana. Like, so white people hanging black people and doing that's real regular to people where I come from. And I just feel like until we can be totally honest, like, working at some of the big companies in Kansas City, I can tell you, when 3 or more brothers are standing together talking, it's a problem. It's an issue. People will walk and stare, security around them, walking up on you, and you wonder. I've worked in some of these places, you get in the door with some of these white women, and you make 2 or 3 times their salary, but they still clutching their purse. That still had one lady tell me at work, how to get the little candy dishes and sit them on the desk for the holidays and all that. I went by to get the little Rice Krispie treat or whatever it was. This lady looked at me like I was crazy. Oh, that's for employees only. Who the fuck you think I am? Like that's how it be. And all the time, and this is coming from somebody that don't matter how smart you are, how well groomed you are. Because I know I didn't want to grow my hair out for a long time because I know how I was viewed. But I come to learn it don't matter. Because I was the most clean, shavenest Negro you knew. But it don't matter. It really, that's my experience. And again, I've been a couple different places. You know, I'm from Louisiana. I lived in Washington State for a little while. I worked out in the New York offices. And from what I see, it's nothing the same. The biggest thing I'll say is the difference that I found was in Louisiana. Like, when white people don't like you, they just tell you. We don't like inwards or whatever they want to say. But everywhere else, it's the same feeling. But people will smile in your face and do the same stuff behind your back and act like it's okay. That's the reality that I come from. And you know, knowing some of these high level guys, and I'm talking about executive level people who have told black women that's good for your kind. As in terms they're going up the ladder and told them face to face in meetings. Like, and these are some of the most reputable companies in Kansas City. I'll say that. It's everywhere. No, and even the people that got the 30, 40 people diversity teams, they some of the worst ones. Because you'll be walking out at the company, you know how they have like hot chocolate and all the little stuff out in the mornings during the holidays. I had this one lady literally following me around the whole thing trying to take a picture. And I was like, ma'am, I don't want to take a picture. And like when she stopped trying to take a picture of me, she took a picture of some African dudes behind me. Because she was looking to put a black person in the picture. And again, this is one of the best companies in Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? Like this happens usually. And I guess that's speaking in this conversation. If we can't have this conversation here, y'all don't know we can have it. But that's everywhere. The little companies, the big companies, the diverse companies, the women-owned businesses that's supposed to be women-friendly. That black white line is in everything we do, everywhere we go, every time you open your eyes. We have to speak about it in that way, in my opinion, because it's in everything we do. And until we address it, I don't think it'll
everything.
ever be done.
I think, and that's the truth that we have to be honest about. That Black Americans deal with racism at all facets, at every level. I mean, you mentioned certain professional Black Americans don't want to speak on those issues, but they face it too, because even with the high paying jobs that we get, our pay isn't equal to what white people are being paid at our jobs to do the same things. You know, I was reading an article last week that says the racial pay gap, not the wealth gap, but the actual pay gap, saying that I believe it's still for every dollar a white man makes, a Black man makes, is it like 71 cents? And then for 67. And then for Black women, it's less. I think it's like
61, I think.
Yeah, 61.
Go ahead.
So even in that, even though you may, you know, I don't even want to say it's like you may think you're doing okay, because I think we're delusional. And I don't want to say, and it sounds so harsh, but really it's like, I don't even want to pretend like, oh, Black people are doing okay, because we're not collectively doing okay. You know, most of us who are in those jobs, they're not even good paying jobs, because we're not being paid equal to our white counterparts for doing the same things. So it's like we have to accept that truth. It doesn't, you know, no matter what your paycheck, no matter what you're bringing home, it should be more. So
And also, I was gonna add on to
I
what you.
think Miss Al had her hand up. You wanna,
I was
hold on.
just going to reiterate, if you add the, what is that, the wages they make while incarcerated, it takes the black man down to, was it 51 cents on
Yeah,
the dollar when all of that is factored in? So that pay gap is real. It's real. It's real. That's all.
yeah, that's what I was gonna add. I'm glad Miss Al brought it up because that we don't include the black male population, generally because most groups of incarcerated people are generally less than 1%, and because it's around 1%, it's negligible data. So they don't include that into the wealth statistics and all the income statistics. But because black men are incarcerated, roughly about 10% of our population is incarcerated. And so 10% is way negligible. And you got to think some of these guys are getting paid 10 cents on the dollar, if that. And these are men like Kamala Harris, go figure. She had people that were in prison fighting fires in California. And I think they made like $1 a day, 10 cents a day, or something to that effect. And yeah, that's just what it is. When you factor that in, it's even less. And I think something I heard Tom talking on a lot. You look at mostly white men and white women, married, live together. So while as we see white women make less money than white men, yeah, but most white women live with white men. Therefore, what we should be looking at is the combined of those. Whereas all white men make $1, and I think white women make like 74 cents or something like that. So that household has $1.74. Whereas you look at black households, black women make 67 cents. Black men make about 51 cents. So that's only like $1.10. And comparing it in groups, because these groups majority wise stay with one another.
Yeah, sorry. Arnita just posted an article in the chat, so I was taking a look at it, and it has information about the racial wage gap. So I haven't had the chance to read the whole thing, but I think it's just safe to share this part of it here. I'll just read what it says. Okay, so here we can see Black male earnings for every $1 earned by white men. Um, the data started in 1950, where the wage difference was 57 cents to every dollar. In 2015, maybe, it increased to 67 cents per dollar. And it says, government statistics suggest that the earnings gap between Black and white men is substantially smaller than it was 75 years ago. It shrunk in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and has remained largely stable since then. But these statistics are misleading. A more comprehensive look at the data based on recent academic research shows that the Black-white wage gap is roughly as large today as it was in 1950. So these are just a couple of examples of the things Black Americans deal with, and this is just in the workforce. We have like blatant racism where we're getting nooses hung around our necks, and then we also have the wage gap which is something a little bit more covert, because unless you're like intentionally asking your coworkers what they make, you really wouldn't know if there was that big of a difference. You just assume that you all are making the same because you 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 think, or some of us think of ourselves like as Black people who work at these jobs. They see themselves, maybe going out to hanging out with their white coworkers. They see themselves driving similar cars as their coworkers. They do the same thing, so they think they're on the same level. But if you really get into the data, you realize that we're not.
I know something I used to kind of pay attention to, or something I still pay attention to, honestly. Um, when you're at work and you're listening to your coworkers, y'all have a water cooler talk or whatever. I just would notice some of the things that they talk about, like trips they've taken, places they've been. You hear about used to hear a lot about the down payments and, vacation homes and all that kind of stuff. And like it used to intrigue me at the time because this was around the time I first started getting on the ADOS train. Like I was the first couple videos, so I'm starting to listen to things a little different. And I would hear about some of these, what was regular life to a lot of people. And I was always fascinated with it because it was nothing like my life. Like, I had bills I had to pay, I had student loans I had to pay, you know what I'm saying? My mama need this, my daddy need that, my grandmother need this, all this kind of stuff. And it's like I never heard the differences. And, some of these guys I got close to over the years, and we had those conversations. One particular company I was working for, I've been working for a while, and this other kid was fresh out of college. Come find out, he came in making more money than I did. And at the time, this is like my second or third big company I had worked for. So, you would think I was establishing my career and was at a certain level. This kid was fresh out of college making like $2,000 more than I was. And it's like, and I'm, doing really good at the company I'm working for. Like, we making a lot of money. Like the company's booming. And I was a part of the boom. And it's like, it wasn't until moments like that I, whether I hear them talking about what they're buying for or how they're paying for it, or just hearing that. I got real close with my buddy, and he just let me know one day. Now, it just so happened I was on my way out the door when I found out. So I was like, well, I guess I made a good decision. But I think we have to listen with a different ear. Because think about it, most of the things that we're asking for, or the things that we have trouble with, the way I view it, and I feel like that article you just mentioned here speaks in testament to it. We asking for the same stuff we was asking for 50, 60, 70 years ago. We want jobs, good education, good health care, like livable homes. That's the same thing we've been wanting the whole time we've been here. And we still don't have it. And that's why I argue so much with people that, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say that we haven't progressed at all from where we started from. But I think my issue is we have to be honest.
Yeah. I'm
Majority of
sorry.
people know both.
I think I think anytime you work in such a hostile environment that you're subjected to being assaulted in the workplace, we haven't progressed as far. Like that, the incident at the Kansas City Fire Academy, that happened last year. That wasn't decades ago. That was in 2019. And it seems like the Fire Academy really tried to cover it up, because I'm still a little bit confused about how that man wasn't arrested and charges brought on him for assaulting someone. So I just think, excuse me. I just think we really need to start being honest with ourselves, and that there are, I mean, aside from saying, I, I, I mean, how have we progressed? Because I was going to give an example of saying that they can't outright lynch us anymore, but they do. So it's like, how far have we really progressed? When all the things that we were fighting against, 50, 60, 70 years ago are the things that we're still facing today.
Question, and it's something I used to wonder about a lot. When you raise that issue, and if I'm going through something, you know what I'm saying, in my company or wherever I'm at, when I bring that issue up, 90% of the time, I'm going to eventually have to answer to a white person. And I think what we're finding out now is, or what's happening, is that the amount, or what I think actually, the amount of white people, let's say at the top per se, is decreasing. So now you have more non-white people, because I don't like people of color, I like that word, but there are more non-white people, I think, in upper situations. Because I know in the South, you go say I get assaulted or something on my job, okay, now I have to go talk to my supervisor. But he probably goes to church with the same guy that assaulted me. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, oh no, it wasn't like that. That's not what really happened. You can't tell me what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. But most of the time, there's some white, i.e., random insert white guy in a position that makes a morality call, as I would call it. And I just think it's immoral because even I've used myself again as an example. Working at a company, see a guy looking up guns on his lunch break, and then he says out loud, Trayvon Martin deserved to die. Mike Brown deserved to die. Just as clear as anything. Ran it all the way up the chain to the VP, and they ran it back down, and I was asked to be removed from the group. That's like, do you want to go somewhere else? It's like, the fuck? But like, that's what happened. So that's again, this is me on my shit. Not, I don't want to put this on, this isn't an ADOS thing to me. This is personal. You run it up
I
the chart
think
and
it is an
somebody,
area West thing though, because it happens to all of us.
you're right. You're right. Touche. Yeah, you run it up, and at some point somebody says, no, that's not important. And
Yeah.
then
I mean, we all have those stories, so.
most of the time, you're labeled as the bad guy. Then you're the person nobody wants to work with. You're the guy that has what they like to say, well, he has thin skin. You gotta have thick skin to work here. Like all that old bullshit. Like that's how I see it. Like that's what happens. And I just never understand like how people are so immoral. But then I understand that is America. That is where we live, and it has not changed. And that is why I feel personally, if you're not fighting to change that, you are the biggest part of the problem because you are aware that it happens and you're not doing anything to change it. You are worse than the KKK in my mind because you know you see it and you know it's wrong and you won't do nothing. It's way more of those types of people in the world, in America specifically, than I see the KKK, Charlottesville type people.
All right, Miss Al, I saw you had your hand raised, and then so Miss Al, and then Brian.
Miss Al there?
She might have stepped away. Oh, hold on. Okay.
Sorry about that. The point I just wanted to add, the Supreme Court justice that was just confirmed, Amy Cohen Barrett, she ruled on the case surrounding New York Transit, where a supervisor called employee the N-word, and it went through the EEOC, and they said that it was not discrimination. I think those are the things that we are impelled to file discrimination charges, and when you take it through the proper channels, they deemed that it didn't prove discrimination. And the Black employee was expected to, continue on under that type of environment at work. I don't even think they considered it a hostile work environment. So that was just an example of someone that did take, file discrimination charges, went through the EEOC, and when it made it to the judge, it was deemed not discrimination. And now she's our Supreme Court justice. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Brian, it's on you, huh?
I was just going to say, the closest thing I can, if we're sharing stories, the closest thing I can share, or the anecdote that I have that's the closest thing to this, and of course it's this tiny fraction of that experience that have been shared so far, is a few years back. I guess it would have been Christmas of 2014. And let me preface this by saying that I'm sharing this anecdote just related to Leighton's anecdote about, just hearing somebody saying something as ridiculous and offensive and obscene and as Trayvon Martin deserved to die. I was at my two brothers, older brothers, stepbrothers, were in town for Christmas 2014, and we were running an errand to get stuff for dinner, and just at I don't know even how it came up, but we started talking about Eric Garner and body cameras and whatnot, and they both said, like, if Black people would just comply with commands of officers, this would be an issue, and I gotta say, we ended up getting into an argument in the car on the way home. I was driving the car, and it sneaks up on you, and I don't know. I don't really have a point there other than to say, yeah, I don't know. That's it.
No, I think it's fair because I think something that we should all really hone in on in ADOSKC is the data, the information, because it's true enough, you could be in a conversation with your brothers, you could be talking to a coworker, you could be just out on the street, advocating for ADOS, and people will come along and they'll say, well, yeah, you're saying all this about what Black Americans have to go through, but what about XYZ? And we have to remember the data. When it comes to your particular instance, there's too much evidence for incidents of Black Americans not doing anything to provoke an assault from the police, yet they face one anyway. But if you don't have that information at the ready, you might not necessarily know how to verbalize that truth. So I think as we progress in our knowledge, that it'll become second nature, hopefully, to kind of refute and continue to debunk these myths about Black Americans. We don't have to be doing anything to face police brutality. We just happen to catch the wrong officer on the wrong day, and then that's a wrap. But I think, but I think now, as we're in the middle of the holiday seasons, and I'm sure some of us have already experienced those tough conversations with family, especially this year. Now that we're so involved in ADOS, it's kind of hard to ignore the information that's there. That's what my experience has been. I had a debate with my niece, and she was saying that she just feels like black people just need to work harder. Well, we already know what that means. That means that the the effects of systemic racism are being placed at the feet of Black Americans who suffered as a bottom caste in this country, who had those opportunities robbed, stolen from them. I know that because I've been paying attention, reading articles, watching videos, and whatnot. But when it comes to those particular instances, it does get hard because you don't necessarily want to have those arguments. I mean, you don't want to have those arguments with family. You don't want to, like, I don't know. I don't want to say like alienate yourself, but in a sense it is alienating because you're sharing some hard information and they don't necessarily want to hear it. But at the same time, it's at this point it's kind of impossible to ignore. Like, the data is there, and I feel like we're obligated to share it.
I think the issue with the data though, or those voices that we talk about, like, so if we speak on the data the way we speak it, and we notice this playing out every day in what we do. We'll speak and say, hey, the data says, the average black family only is worth 1,400. Or, you know what I'm saying? When we look at our celebrity class, it's like, oh, there's a black middle class. We're like, yo, the IRS doesn't seem to think so. And so now you have that decadent veil. Oh no, me or like what was her name? Angela Rye. Oh, me and my friends got money. I don't know what you no, but your friends ain't us though. And your friends don't have money in relation to their counterparts. And I think that becomes somebody that we or something that we fight and we go back and forth against because you have people like us speaking on the reality and putting things in context more than anything. Because I do feel like a lot of these people, when they say, "Oh, such and such got money," like I know they did the comparison between Oprah and Mike Bloomberg. It's like, oh, Oprah and Bloomberg, they're both millionaires. Oprah's worth both billionaires. Oprah's worth $3 billion. Mike Bloomberg is worth $60 billion. They are not in the same class whatsoever. Like, he's way richer than she is. But you can't tell that to Black America. As far as we're concerned, Warren Buffett and Oprah got the same amount of money. So I think that's something we go up against is in speaking about the data. There are a lot of people that, they hold on to the idea that they make, as opposed to speaking truth to power on the real circumstance in order to help us all out. Everybody's out here doing everything, snatching up everything they can to find something good to feel good about. Because, our lives is where our lives have always been. And that's something we have to fight as well, because it's been 400 years of that. You know what I'm saying? There was house slaves that really thought they was better than field slaves. And most of us still feel that way today. When it's slavery, like, all of it is horrible,
Um, kind of going along to the next topic. So I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and one of the hosts, he's Black, he said that he doesn't think Black people will get reparations.
Okay.
And so I know what my thoughts are on it. But I'd like us all to go around and just really kind of touch on what our opinions are on people who just outright blatantly or outright say, y'all not going to get reparations. Because I guess I'll go first. In my head, when I hear people say that, what I really hear them saying is, I don't, or I'm not going to fight for what my people deserve. For whatever reason, either it's because I'm too scared, I'm too much of a coward to fight for the justice that my people are owed. That's what I hear when people say, I don't think y'all are gonna get reparations. But let's go around and we'll all share our thoughts and how we um, respond to people who just say, y'all not gonna get reparations. What are y'all doing? This is a waste of time, whatever, whatever.
But y'all can go ahead. Y'all know I think
Okay.
I talk a lot.
I'm trying to give everybody a fair chance to speak, but whoever wants to go first, go ahead. I guess that would be you, Leighton.
Yeah.
Oh, or Brian.
Well, I just have a question real quick. Did you say that the podcast host is a black man?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first couple times I heard it, I definitely felt like it was like, yo, I know all this information about reparations and black people in American history and world history and all of that shit. So I'm like, because I know that, if they know what I know, maybe they would believe in the cause too. So I was real big into giving them the facts, giving them the data, giving them the trends and all of that. And then it continued. And now I kind of feel two ways about it. One, when I hear people say y'all ain't never gonna get reparations, the first thing I tell them, don't be the reason, don't be the thing that's standing in our way of getting them. You yourself. Because I feel like even saying that, you making it hard for me to get what we supposed to have. Don't be that person. Because maybe I don't get it. But don't let the reason I don't get it is because they heard you saying we weren't gonna get it more than they heard what I had to say. That's like one of the first things I hear. And the second thing, what I just started to say now, when we get reparations, don't you sign up. Know that now. Now that we fighting to get this reparations and we going through everything we get, and you saying it'll never happen, when we get there, make sure you take your ass somewhere else. Don't be in the line, because we got here without you. And I tell them, if you scared, it's okay to be scared. Just get the hell out the way, because I ain't scared. And if you scared to fight, you need to stay at home and go stay at home, get out the way, because we gonna get it out here. And if you ain't prepared to get out of my way. So you ain't one of the things I gotta fight to get to where we gotta go. And I leave it at that. I don't, for me at least, I don't want people to think like that around me. Because I come from a place where I'm gonna get whatever it is I wanna have. Because ain't nobody gonna stand in my way of getting what I'm after. And if you ain't got that in your mind, you can't be around me. I don't want you nowhere around my person or around anybody that I associate with, because you're in the way. So just get out of my way. I quit to get away from that kind of stuff because I feel like that emotion, that energy is contagious. You see this mountain and you scared. Well, get out the way. Scared money don't make no money. You know what I'm saying? I feel like natural selection, if we're going to get into some science, people like that don't live too long. They lineage die out because they scary. I ain't got time. I don't come from people like that. The people I came from went way across the ocean and survived and went through 400 years of getting raped and murdered, and they still here. So you just gonna have to get out of the way for me. That's how I be feeling.
I've got another question about the context of the podcast in question that led to this question. Was the podcaster saying reparations will never happen, or they won't happen now, or was there some context that, like, the podcaster was saying that Black Americans, Black descendants of slavery, don't deserve reparations, or what? Can you give a little more context for the podcast?
Yeah, he was basically saying that y'all not gonna give it, period. Like, they not gonna give it to you at all, ever.
And adding on to that, okay, and again, y'all check me if I'm out of line. Y'all know I'm gonna keep saying that because I feel like I'll be way over there with it. I think, Brian, the underlying foundation of him making that statement is white people are never gonna give Black people what they deserve. White people are never gonna grow a conscience and be moral enough to pay us what they know we're owed and what they know they took, stole, raped, and robbed from us. That's never gonna happen at no point in the foreseeable future, because white people are never gonna collectively say, there's a mistake, we're sorry, here we are trying to fix it with something that actually matters and something that's actually gonna have a big effect on Black people. And again, I'm doing my me thing, but like I say, if y'all think that's out of line, let me know, because that's what I think they think.
Go ahead, Miss Al.
Well, for me, well, did you get the article about the judge? I
Yeah,
posted it in that, yeah. And secondly, I just tell them it's a dead old, and I'll ask them, do you think you received ample opportunity to succeed? Were you able to get opportunities that put you in a position, to succeed in life? And then, depending on that answer, of course, it's going to be no. Or are you just inherently unable to succeed? You're defective. And basically, I just tell them you bought into white supremacy. So that's basically how I just tell them it's a dead old. And if you don't agree, you bought into white supremacy, saying there's something inherently wrong with us. That's why we haven't succeeded collectively as a class of people. And that's it. And I can pretty much antagonize people. So that's pretty much, I'm trying to keep it short because I can rattle off a lot of information at a lot of times. So that's it. Just basically it's the deal, have you been successful? Once they answer yes or no, it's like, of course it's no, because most of us don't reach our full potential. And of course, a lot of systemic racial problems, the ADOS life. So that's all I have. That's it.
So now we have about 30 minutes left, and at this point it's kind of coming full circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, because we have all this evidence here of chattel slavery, of Jim Crow, of mass incarceration. In Kansas City, we have the evidence of redlining and racial discrimination. I really call it like hate crimes. What's happening with the Kansas City Fire Department. We have evidence of police brutality in the Kansas City Police Department. We have evidence of racism in government with city council. We've had all this evidence that's been building over the centuries. So with all of that, That is our claim. That is Black Americans saying that we've had all of this stuff happen to us at the hands of our local government, and we deserve some type of redress for that. So for anyone to say like, oh, y'all not gonna get reparations, it's basically saying that this country will never have to address what it did to you ever. And for anyone to say that, I think it's cowardly, and they need to step aside. They need to move out the way. Because I don't want to sit here and argue with people who, even though they see all of that information, they see all of that evidence, they still think like, oh, y'all still not gonna get it. Because what I think should really happen is that all of the data should have them fired up. They should be like, wow, like I didn't know all of this, and we, a lot of this information isn't, it's not taught in school. So a lot of us are just now learning within these past couple of years just how far reaching systemic racism impacts Black Americans. That's true enough. But once you get the information, for us to not react to it wholeheartedly says a lot. And those people who see this data and don't react to it need to step aside. So those of us who see it, who hear it, and who are living it and want to fight for justice that we deserve can do that work. That goes for the whole nation, that goes for Kansas City, that goes for Missouri. Racism is a problem in Kansas City. And for those of us who are still saying, oh, well, that's unacceptable, that we won't tolerate that, in a sense, they're in the way. Because they're not dealing with the truth of what racism is. And if they're not dealing with that truth, they're not going to be a part of the solution.
And everything we're doing should be in support of the solution at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know, y'all. It scared me at first when I found out how much of a minority that we are. It was a little worried, but I'll say for me, and I suggest y'all doing this as well. The more that I read about the civil rights movements and the more I got familiar with like world history, all of the revolts and all of the fights in world history where you have a small group of oppressed people going against a bigger structure, it was never the majority of people fighting. It was always a small minority. So that gave me a lot of strength in thinking, okay, we can do this. Because only the people that are up for the task of what we're doing, those are the only people doing what we do. Because we understand why this matters. We understand why this works. We understand how important this is. And if you can't understand that on a simple level, I don't really want you here. Because you're going to have to fight. And you're going to have to keep fighting. You're going to have to sit down and take a break, get yourself together, and then you're going to have to pick something up and start fighting again. Like, that's the nature of what we got going. And like I said, I get a lot of strength from you guys. Seeing y'all dedicated, seeing y'all staring at it when I have to sit back and take a break. Because, man, listen, just somebody experienced recently, people wake up early in the morning to hate on us. Like, literally. Like, 6:30 in the morning on some anti-ADOS type of stuff. I had it happen to me multiple times personally. And I'm like, how could you say something like that so early in the morning? Like, it's a lot. So we just gotta stay at it all day. Stay with the fight. We know how to fight now. And I think it's seeing like when the newsletter was talking about, with the HQ stuff, with us getting, we have all these chapters nationally, but now we'll have one specific place tied to what we're doing. And I think that'll be a lot because we'll be able to communicate. And that's the thing Malcolm and Martin always talks about is, we're not outmanned, we're not outgunned, we're out organized. So the more organized we can be, the more lessons learned or conversations we can have with people, I think the better off we're gonna be. So we stay in it, baby. I'm gonna be here until it's over. I'm gonna tell you that. If everybody leave, I'm gonna be here. I'm telling because I ain't got nothing else. To be totally honest with y'all. You see, the reparations of my whole family ain't gonna be looking for nothing real soon.
I especially think that this, like, going into next year, we need to really hone in on what works and what doesn't. Because so far, all of the, I mean, all of the so-called solutions for Black Americans, they haven't worked. We have organizations in the city that are working towards housing, affordable housing. They're working towards kind of combating discrimination in jailing and prisons. They're talking about what we need to do as far as jobs. But unless you're dealing with the history of systemic racism, the solutions that they're coming up with aren't going to sustain Black Americans. Because take, for example, mass incarceration. I think Cori Bush put out a tweet. Hold on. I'll say this and I'll try to find it. Cori Bush said that she's working to end something along the lines of she's trying to end mass incarceration for Black Americans. And I said, yes, and because she's trying to bring our people home, I think is what she said. And but bringing them home without wealth, without resources is bringing them home to what?
To go back to jail.
Mm-hmm. So I think we need complete redress. As we say, we need pure reparations. And these piecemeal programs aren't going to cut it.
So some go ahead, Miss Al, I'm sorry.
I had 2 points. One point focused on our Black firemen ended up suing the city and they won. I do have the article. It was filed in 2013 and it was about promotions to battalion chiefs and captains. And they won the lawsuit, saying that it was biased in the way they chose them. And I can put that in there. And I wanted to focus on here in St. Louis. I got a chance to sit in 2030 driving a decade of inclusive growth that they're having going, that they're putting on here in St. Louis, provide all these jobs in transportation. But we posed the question of how are urban Blacks, because they use the term BIPOC, how's the urban poor? How are we going to compete, beyond service jobs? How will we compete in this incentive growth? They had five different, I guess you call them modules of growth. But unless you attack education, we still won't be able to compete. And secondly, how can we be included starting now or even be included all the way up to 2030. It's exactly as Kiara said, they're using piecemeals, but they're not attacking the core problems. You know, they're trying to put a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound. So again, I guess it goes back to legislation. We need specific legislation, you know, for us. And there's no way around it.
Piggybacking on that, you know, y'all, this is a conversation or ideology, I guess, the way I understood it when we look at all how the piecemealing has helped us or hurt us. And I couldn't help but think about those articles that we found a couple weeks ago that were saying, you know, there hasn't, or what it was, incarceration for Black people has tripled since like '68. I think home ownership was up or it was down, and I think unemployment was up as well. So like I look at those, you know, because those are the biggest statistics as I see them. You know, with the wealth gap probably being one of the biggest issues that I use to measure progress in America over a given time period. So if we're incarcerating more, you know, our wealth is down, our unemployment is down. You know, the conversation I was having with someone was whatever political strategy that we have been employing since the Civil Rights Act up until the present, I think when we look at all of the statistics, we all see the trends going down. Like wealth is down, home ownership is down, incarceration is up. So we're going in the wrong direction. And so the first thing I think about is when I'm going in the wrong direction, the first thing I do is stop and find out what the right direction is. And now knowing from, you know, all of our social indicators, like to live a certain happiness or success, you need X amount of dollars. Because X amount of dollars pays for health insurance, pays for good schooling, pays for higher education, pays for retirement, pays for emergency money. Like we can specifically say what that amount is based on the American economy. And essentially we need to get beyond that point because of all the years we were below that point. And so to me, the way I understand the concept, everything that we've been doing politically in terms of the piecemealing, that's never going to work because we've been piecemealing since the 60s. And piecemealing ain't got us no closer to where we wanted to go than where we started. So whatever we do, it can't be nothing like anything we've ever done. And when I have these conversations with these people that hold office, one thing they keep, one constant thing I hear from them, they're still thinking in the box of the wheelhouse of what we've been doing. Well, if we could just get this, and we could just get that, then we can maybe, we don't have no time for that. We've been this and that and band-aiding over gunshot wounds for here 60, 70 years, and it's not working. But I think the biggest issue we have in that department is, I think we're the only people that understand it. I think ADOS is the only group of people that understands everything that we have been doing has been wrong and it hasn't been enough to get what we need. And the biggest way I could put it into a sentence, the simplest way, is when I think about what happened. Slavery was dramatic. Slavery was transformative. Slavery took you from normal humans and beings to property for over 400 years. You're gonna need something just as transformative to fix Black life in America as what happened to cause the issues that we have with slavery, redlining, and peonage, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, and convict leasing, and all that stuff that happened. We have to have that on the other end. And to me, that's the only way you fix it. Because anything else isn't going to hit the mark. And if it's not hitting the mark, I don't want it. Because what we got to keep in mind, too, there are a lot of people out there who will say, well, we can't give you everything you want, but we'll give you enough. What you're telling me is, it's all or nothing, really. Either you're going to do what it's going to take to get me right, or you're not. And everything you're talking about that ain't reparations is not going to get me there. So we can't accept anything less. Because understanding anything less than how we have it understood doesn't fix the issue. And if it's not going to fix the issue, I think we would have been wasting our time the whole time. Because that's what it's about. Making a better future for our children and their children than what we had growing up. That's what everybody wants. White America wants that as well as Black America. The difference with white America, they're willing to take that from Black America to ensure that their children have it, in my opinion. But that's how I see it. It's really that simple. Something drastic happened to us, so something drastic has to happen for us in order for it to, in order for us to be, where we believe, where we deserve to be, because it's what we work for.
All right, we have about 15 minutes left. Does anyone have any other headline news they want to address this week? Any other interesting articles or news that they've came across? Go ahead.
I don't be willing to talk all the time. I feel like I talk a lot. Y'all know we talk about this. The vaccine. I don't know if y'all been keeping up with the corona vaccine, but I know they started giving the vaccine in the UK, and I'm pretty sure that the United States is going to, they're going to approve Pfizer or one of the others for the vaccine. I'll talk about why I'm worried. Of course, we know about Tuskegee and all of that type of business. From how I understand it, the vaccine is going to be a 2-shot process. So you're going to take one shot and then take another shot. I watch CNN a lot, so they've been talking that right now there's not enough of the vaccine to give to the entire, what is it? It's essential workers. It's like all the nurses and your EMTs and those type of people. I forget what their names are. But the first line workers, I'm not quite sure that they have enough to supply all of them first. But in either case, it's gonna be a 2-step process. I probably ain't rocking with it just because I'm scared of all of that. And more importantly, they have to keep the vaccine at negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the shipping process. And how I understand it, my father works for the he works for the post office. And he told me that he thinks that they have the right facilities to possibly make that happen, but I don't think we have enough vaccines or we have the infrastructure in order to keep that virus vaccination cold enough throughout the whole process before it gets to you. It's just a lot of stuff, like it's a lot that could go wrong. And from what I've heard the specialists talk about, they say that taking the vaccine doesn't prevent you getting the virus. It's just if you get the virus, you're not affected as bad as somebody that didn't take it. So me personally, I'm a little younger and I'm being corona scary. So if by the time the vaccine get here, if I ain't got it by then, I'm gonna probably take my chances because whatever I'm doing working, so I'm probably just gonna stay with that. But I don't like vaccines. I feel like it's gonna be the next mesothelioma commercial in the next 20 years. And they generally don't get the first round of vaccines generally is the least effective. Because then they gotta take it, and I heard something about it was causing I forgot what the name. I need to look that up, but it had an effect. Go ahead, Ms. Al.
Bell's
Bell's
palsy.
palsy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
Bell's
causing.
palsy.
Go ahead, Chris. You got it.
No, go ahead. You got it.
No, I was just saying I heard it's causing Bell's palsy in some people, and like I said, I see more going wrong with me taking it than me not taking it. Because if I catch coronavirus, I got it. You know what I'm saying? And then I might think about taking it. But up to this point, whatever I've been doing, been working, and so I'm probably gonna rock it out. And they did say the next 3 months is gonna be the worst part of this virus that we've seen by far. Because I think the hospitals are getting at a point where they're at the critical mass where they're getting real close to not being able to take more patients. So just throwing that out there, I want all of y'all to be safe. But I ain't rocking with them vaccines. I'm gonna drink my orange juice, drink my Code Liver like my grandma used to tell me growing up, and we're gonna thug it out from there.
And elderberries.
Yeah.
See if you could
Yes.
find elderberry supplements.
Okay. There.
I put an article from Reuters. I'm not sure that I pronounce it, but they had a. What is it?
Routers.
Routers.
Reuters.
Oh, it's Reuters.
Reuters.
Okay, my bad.
It's Reuters.
Reuters.
Yeah, Reuters.
Okay. Well, Reuters put out a fact check clarifying some claims from the Pfizer vaccine, and I'll just read a little bit of it here. So, social media users have been sharing a post that makes several claims of serious negative health effects from the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, including that 6 people died during late-stage trials. These claims are partly false. 6 people did die during the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine trials, but only 2 of them were given the vaccine. The other 4 were given a safe placebo solution of salt and water. No causal relationship was established between the vaccine and the 2 deaths, which occurred in line with the normal death rate for the general population. The first person to get the vaccine in the UK is not in critical condition. 4 cases of Bell's palsy or partial facial paralysis were also not considered to necessarily be caused by the vaccine, but the symptom will be under surveillance when the vaccine is distributed. Precautions have also been added for allergic reactions. And here they're talking about the deaths from that occurred during the trials and some of the other effects, ball palsy and allergic reactions as well. Um, um, the bottom part here I wanted to read. It said that when it comes to allergies, the effects are those who have a history of significant allergies have been advised not to take the vaccine, even though there's no causal relationship that has been established between the vaccine or the deaths that occurred. So they're really the companies that are promoting these vaccines, Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, really aren't talking a lot about the side effects of it. But they are, it's just kind of like, oh, this vaccine is made available. It's gonna like solve all your problems. You'll be able to get to whatever you consider a normal life. But I mean, for people like me, like I have severe allergies. And if one of the advisements is for people with severe allergies not to take the vaccine, that would that counts me out. But what I worry about with it is if it's mandatory, because I years ago I worked at a hospital, and there they had a policy where you since you're working around patients whose health is compromised, we had to take the flu shot. I only worked there for a year, and within that year, I had to take the flu shot, and I remember how sick I got from it. So when I think about now, you know, people who are considered essential workers, doctors, nurses, teachers, which I'm in that category, it's kind of like what would happen if they say like, oh, if you're working in the medical field, if you're working around people with compromised health, you have to take the vaccine. If you're a grocery store clerk, you have to take the vaccine. If you're a teacher, you have to take the vaccine. Companies, there's been like several articles put out there that already talk about how corporations are trying to figure out how they can make that happen. So that's my biggest concern. It's not necessarily the the side effects of it, because at this point, you can opt out of. You can just be like, oh, I'm just not going to take it. But then if they make it mandatory, you won't have a choice, or either you quit your job, or you get that shot. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I was gonna say I'm more so, I guess, thinking about it in terms of how the pandemic affects the economy. A lot of our service jobs, we know the average black person in America makes under $40,000, and most of us, have worked some type of delivery system, some type of delivery job. So, like, what if they make the coronavirus vaccine, specific for those people, since they're handling food, the contact and dropping stuff off? I don't know. The whole thing scares me, because once they make that mandatory, then it's like you gotta take it, because you gotta work, because you gotta feed yourself. And I'm scared of it, to be honest, for myself, even personally. Because, like, if my employer says we have to have that vaccine, before returning to work, I might not be able to return to work. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna do everything in my power to not take that vaccine. And it generally, from what I've researched, it generally takes like 3 or 4 years to do the process they did in about, what, 8, 9 months. Like, before January, we wasn't even thinking about coronavirus, and now they're pushing out a vaccine in less than 9 months. That's generally a long process. And then how many corners was cut in order to get what they got out? Like, and then, with all of that being concerned, all of that being considered, you can still get coronavirus if you can't. Like, that's what scares me. I'm gonna take a virus knowing it ain't gonna help me not catch the virus. That was the whole point. So, like, that's personal. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's relative to who you asking and how they understand it. But it's not worth it. Like, for everything that could go wrong, and then we have no idea what the long-term effects of coronavirus or the vaccine is. Because a lot of times with a lot of these medicines that they put in place, I would rather have what's wrong with me. Like, all of the things that could go wrong, all of the side effects in in whatever medication you taking, most of the time they're worse than what you actually suffering from. So, like, I don't know, y'all. I'm a little scary. That stuff a little spooky to me. I ain't really rocking with that for
Does anybody else have any thoughts they want to add in?
I'd like to just add the fact that this is also a two-part vaccine. So, let's always, let's not forget about that part, and the fact that there is the possibility of somebody having a certain side effect on just having the first round, and then what? Then what's the answer to the second round? What do we just put the kibosh on all of that? We were talking about this on the info rail a couple of days ago, when we were saying, like, okay, so what exactly will this mean? How exactly is this supposed to look? And for those who don't take it, what is that going to mean for them? Personally, I still feel like I'm of the mindset of being way on the back of 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 the back. Like, when they decide to make this thing mandatory, which to me seems just very suspicious, in the fact that, let's be real. They've, with a lot of things that they've done or haven't done for ADOS, it's kind of interesting that this is one of the things they want to put ADOS at the front of. This just that alone makes it suspicious to me. That they would say, okay, this is the thing we want to help ADOS with. We don't want to do anything for education, healthcare, economics, jobs, living, banking. redlining, real estate. We don't want to do anything for anything like that. But for this vaccine, we want to make sure that you guinea pigs, I mean, black people are the first ones to take this thing, to let us know if it's okay. I mean, you know, to to check its effectiveness. I mean, it's just weird to me that they're doing that and they're really trying to sell it as such. And I'm so that alone makes me leery. That alone makes me feel like this, things are just not on the up and up. We were talking about the Hegelian dialect, where it's basically, a problem action solution. I mean, problem reaction solution. Well, where we've got the reaction already. I'm sorry, the solution already in place. Where there was talks of having some sort of worldwide pandemic. There were talks of that happening, all the way back in 2010, I believe. So we had talks of that happening all the way back then. We had Fauci working on some sort of vaccine. We had Obama talking about or putting measures in place to make sure that we had some sort of way to thwart a pandemic. So we had a pandemic response in place. So all those things kind of just made it seem like, maybe we were already, kind of had we were kind of wagging the dog, as they say, like the movie. Anyway, I'm talking too much.
Yeah, I think what Chris was saying was right, man. Like it's just weird to me how, and they've said this a lot on CNN. They talked about how I think among white Americans, I think the acceptance of the virus, of the vaccine rather, is like 60 something percent, and it goes like whites, Hispanics, and then African Americans, and among us it's like 40%. And I have seen an article, and I'll see if I can find it here in a second and post it to the chat, where it talks about, people are still, hey, we remember Tuskegee. That was not that long ago. Like, you were putting radioactive waste into our bodies less than a generation ago. Like, how can you, that's why. And they're like, well, what's African Americans, what is their issue with taking this vaccine? The medical industry has never been okay to us. It's sold ourselves. Henrietta Lacks is practice birthing operations on sisters without anesthesia. Like, we can't act like this stuff didn't never happen. We ain't never like going to the doctor. This ain't new. And again, that's something we have to talk about. White America, and I'll go so far as to say that much, has been very vindictive and very crucial to us in healthcare.
Sorry. Bye, Brian. See you next week.
All right, Brian, catch you later. Like, it's been happening. Like, it's been happening. Right now, isn't it like sisters, they have like one of the death rates during birth is like the highest in first world countries? Like, ain't that happening like right now? Like, how do you not speak on that?
Yeah, I think our birth rate is 3 times, or our mortality rate is 3 times higher. But hold on. While you're talking, I'm going to look it up.
Okay, and that's the things where I feel as though we can't talk about taking the vaccine without talking about that. That's the same people that's telling you to take this vaccine. It's the same people that have been, in control of these institutions that have caused our women to die, and they're taking all our kids with all this extra stuff that they don't need, prescribing, ADHD medicine and ADD medicine to our kids. And that's the same thing. We can't act like this is different. And it was the same pushback we had with Biden. He's shown us a history of who he is for 40, 50 years. Just like the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, the healthcare industry. They have shown us who they are and how they feel about us over the same time period. So yeah, I got a right to be skeptical. We have a right to be skeptical. Y'all wouldn't trust me. We couldn't do half of the stuff that y'all done did to us. Like, It doesn't work like that. So until I get those things addressed, like out in the open, like Dr. Fauci speaking on it, they can kiss my ass with a vaccine. Excuse my French, but I'm good on that part. They can keep that.
I just wanted to throw in a personal comment. Myself, and I have a compromised immune system. I can't take live vaccines. You know, what are the exceptions to this vaccine? Chris, you mentioned you did your podcast about this. What are they saying? Are they using like, for example, I need a shingles vaccine, and I can't take the live vaccine. So apparently the live vaccine is the most common form that they administer to you. So in order for me to get a shingles vaccine, the one that I need is the one that costs a lot of money, and they have to order it. You know, are there exceptions to who can get vaccinated? Because definitely, did they mention that? I really, personally, I'm terrified of taking it, you know, because of the effects of the illness, that the effects that it causes people, like the lungs, and those are my normal lupus symptoms. Those are my normal autoimmune symptoms. So that's all I have. They're not answering a lot of questions. And a lot of people are really too sick to take the vaccine. That's just my opinion. And in its experimentary stages. And that's what it is, because they normally test viruses for antidotes for years on different test populations. So I have stopped reading on it. Does anyone know?
No, no, I was gonna say no. I don't. The last I was looking up was the story about the Bell's palsy that we were speaking about earlier. I was looking at that just earlier today. But as far as the effectiveness and the alternatives and all of that, no, I haven't heard anything on that. Bless you.
All right, so we are out of time for the day. A couple things, and then we'll close the meeting. So I found the stat on mortality rates for Black American women. I'll just read it real quick. This is from NBC News. The title is "The U.S. finally has better maternal mortality data. Black mothers still fare the worst." Using the new coding method, researchers found that of the 658 women who died of maternal causes in 2018, Black women fared the worst, dying 2.5 times more often than white women, 37.1 versus 14.7 their deaths per 100,000 live births. And there's the chart there. So I'll do the stop share. And then, does anyone here watch the Tim Black show?
What show?
The Tim Black show. It's on YouTube.
No. Never heard of it.
All right, let's see if I can find this video. So, oh, found it.
Hi everyone, we are the Story Girls. This is how Fiverr helped us turn our
Just a moment.
into the bathroom of our.
You tell me. Believe it or not, some people.
All right, so last week he covered this segment from a news outlet, and I'll share that video here. It's a good place to stop. Did you share it again? All right, so can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Can you hear it too?
The details on why the judge.
Yeah.
But that,
Various, is everything okay?
Can you hear
Mhm.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so let's watch and listen.
okay, my government leaders have abandoned me. Are you the owner? $4 trillion of stimulus money. They gave it to who? Special interest.
Sound just went out.
In a position where I have to.
Okay.
Okay. So do you
All right,
think
that's bad.
thing to do? Absolutely. I feel everybody needs to stand up. Hey, listen, there was enough money to give every family in this country $20,000 to go home for 2 months. They chose to give it to special interests and campaign donors, the Kennedy Space Center, and they abandoned us. So you could have given me money. I'd gladly walk away for 60 days and let this virus settle down. I'm not going to do it alone. Okay? Are you going to continue to violate the state's orders and stay open? State order. This.
Okay. So he kind of goes off into a whole like weird Trump supported tangent, which is why I cut it off. I'll add it here so you can check it out. But I think that's a really good place to stop. I mean, he's right. We live in a country that could have given each of us here money to just go home and be safe, and
Yeah.
they didn't. And I know there's been some post about, oh well, Canada gave their citizens thousands, France and Denmark and Ireland and all these other countries gave 1,000, 2,000, $3,000 a month, and America
Mhm.
gave $1,200.
Yeah.
That's the country we live in. And then some argue like, oh well, those countries are smaller. Well, that's true, but I feel like but America, but if America is is supposed to be one of the greatest countries in the world, that means that they had the means to do much more than they did, but they
Well,
didn't.
let's finish out a couple of statements. So America is the greatest country in the world for corporations, and so when you're looking at or looking for some sort of oh sorry. So when we're looking for some sort of I don't know, looking for the government to do anything other than what it's already been doing. I mean, I think we're kind of, barking up the wrong tree, honestly. You know what I'm saying? Because the government is only going to do what the government's been doing. And it's all about it's all about taking care of its own people. So when it comes to what's going on with everything that's going on here, it's like they're going to take care of corporations, and they're going to take care of those public. I mean those you know basically bottom line is the government will never miss an opportunity to give corporations a pat on the back, for or to give corporations some money. They will never miss an opportunity to give corporations some sort of kickback, some sort of way, because they could have very well given that money to the U.S. Population, to the people, but they chose to give it to corporations and public and personal interest. And So as a result, here we are, months, almost a year later, and you know, they're trying to force a vaccine down our throat that we don't know about, that people who don't trust, while you know this, you know, there's no guarantee that the thing is even going to be. I mean, I know they're saying it's 95% effective, but at the same time, 95% effective to who? In what circumstances? Under, you know, under what? Like how many different cases have you've been testing this under? You know, as somebody who puts out information and who works in a space where, you know, stuff has to be tested from various angles before it can actually be consumed by people. I want to see what that data looks like, to be quite honest. Anyway, that's it.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add in?
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, I was writing in the chat. I would want to see the numbers, how he derived it. I mean, not that I think he's lying at all, but you know, we know not too long after Corona happened, you know, we gave like $14 billion to like the airline industry. And you know, it always has me to thinking like we always talk about how bad communism and socialism is. Well, that's what it is. Like something bad happened and the government just gave a bunch of rich people a bunch of money to stop their businesses from falling. Well, why, if you just give that money directly to the people, then your business doesn't matter more than the lives of regular people, because you don't have to, your business should be secondary to the floor of the American citizens. So I just feel like I believe that America's way out of this issue is by, you know, the vaccine, as opposed to what we should have did was like Chris was speaking to and like that gentleman was speaking to. I think I just read today, New Zealand, they're totally coronavirus free. Like, and they're back to normal now. And New Zealand, all this money we got, we supposed to be leading the world and all of this stuff. All we had to do was shut everything down for 2 months, which we had the money to do. We matter of fact, Fauci was speaking about it as it was happening. Other countries are shutting down totally. The government is paying the citizens to not go anywhere. And the citizens are, well, if I got enough money to stay at home, I'm not going nowhere because I can eat every day. That's what happened. But you know, now most of us aren't plugged into like world news, but that's how the country, because I think Italy was one of the countries that handled it the best. And that's what they did. They told everybody, you know, we'll provide provisions for food and all that for people that don't have it, but we're going to give you money. You know, no evictions. Everybody gets, you know, lights and utilities, all that kind of stuff. All that was taken care of. Just don't go nowhere. And they paid that money for that amount of time, and then everything subsided, and they went back to normal now. We just handled it horribly, and America's doing what it always does. When America gets in trouble, it goes to black people to get them out of the bind. Just like they did in the election, just like they're doing with coronavirus. We need niggas to bail us out because we in a bind, so we need y'all to do what y'all do to get us back on our feet. And I just think we're at a point now where we ain't all going for that no more. Like, you're going to give me my bread first, or we'll just all that shit get burned out.
I just wanted to make a point about farm aid. You know, rural farmers have been receiving aid opposed to, you know, the urban people. You know, we got the stimulus check was that March, April. We got the stimulus opposed to, you know, Trump destroyed the farm industry. So they've been getting consistently paid since 2015. I'll get documents, but they're receiving farm aid in the rural areas opposed to, you know, no money's coming into the urban areas as far as any type of aid. That's something else.
Except for the black farmers.
I mean, I'll add this, and here's something that we haven't even thought about. I'll say I don't think. Like now we're in a position where we actually have to even think about, okay, now this vaccine is a part of national defense. We have to think about the storage of it. We have to think of the storage units. We have to think about, are people going to be attacking cold storage units? You know, because it has to be stored at negative 70 something degrees. so that way it could be, so that way it could be remain stable. So that if anybody decides to attack this any sort of facilities that can house this thing, guess what? Then that just kills the whole ability for you to have that thing for your whole nation. So like, so that's something else we got to start thinking about, and that's a whole other thing that could have been thwarted, had we put more forethought into this whole virus and the way we're going to take care of this thing, and how we're going to, and what our approach is going to be for this, and as a nation, how we're going to handle this thing. So, anyway, hindsight is 2020 though. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
Keep in mind, I mean, we gotta, I know we don't think about it like this, but the White House still isn't clear on how to handle the coronavirus. They're still having people in there without masks and having outbreaks. If the White House can't get it together, I'm good, homie. I'm away. Because the most important man in the world and everybody around him don't know what the hell they do. And that don't make me feel good to think I'm going to have a better shot at something that's going to protect me than him. I'm good on that part. I'm not really confident with that at all.
I think in Kansas City, we still, I mean, we're still, I'm not sure what the exact rates are. I haven't kept with it over the past week, but we're still having the debate over higher COVID positive rates, test rates, and how people are still going out to eat.
I mean, it's like we said. When you look at here, like, was it Quentin Lucas just had resigned, right? So again, we look at the leader class, we look at our politicians, we look at our mayor and the officials around them. Again, I don't know what they got going on. It's so much back and forth. I heard there was a town hall the other day that was really left field. Like, it's hard. I think we're in a moment now where, we don't trust the government. Not that ADOS ever has, but this year I feel like 2020 has been a year where everybody feels like black people. White people looking at white people the way we've been looking at white people forever. You know what I'm saying? Or the government, or depending. I say white people is real general. I'm sure it might be an issue with that, but I'm speaking from the heart, so we can handle that the way we handle it. But I don't understand that part. Like, nothing is together. Like, from the White House to Kansas City, no one's moving as a unit. And I think that's because we are honest. Now's the time that we've been sweeping stuff under the rug for so long. It's a big rope in the middle of the floor, and don't nobody want to admit how it got there. And that's what I feel like what we are in now. Along with the police chief as well. It's never a good thing when your police chief is under fire and your mayor's under fire. That's a lot of fires in a small, area.
All right. We can I think next week we can come back to where we're leaving off today. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Layton, Chris, Miss Al, Arnita, and Brian. Appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you here next week. Bye.
All right, y'all take it easy.
Yeah.